Hello again! Today, something command block related again. I know, but I just can't help it. Anyway, let me demonstrate the system and what it's capable of. First off, I will enable the debug screen so you can see that I'm not cheating. Keep an eye on my coordinates. I'll place down this wither skull as a reference point in this iron desert here. I will activate the system and then you will notice a few things. I get teleported to this weird place here. I get a sign in my hand. This stone button appears, and the chat tells me that I was apparently found at 237 minus 171. Seems about right. Let me place down this sign here and press this button. And now I get teleported back to where I was before, at my normal skeleton skull. Let's move over a few blocks over here maybe. Let's place down a zombie head, activate the system again. And I will again land here, get a sign, a button will appear, I get a text message in the chat with the new coordinates I was found now, and I can press this button and teleport back, if I want to. I can also just get back to the hub here and press the skeleton button again, and we will land at the skeleton. How does it work, you may ask? Good question. It's actually not very complicated. It's a lot of redstoning and a lot of command blocks, but the actual stuff that happens is not hard to understand. So let's get through that step by step. But first of all, the world download is of course in the description below if you now want to download it and test it for yourself, play around with it, or want to look at the redstone by your own hands, which might be a little bit more useful than watching me going around in a video. These are the command blocks behind the whole system. We are currently in the spawn chunks. The whole mechanic here uses up 4 chunks and you have to keep them loaded, otherwise it won't work, of course. So that's why I put this in the world spawn chunks. Also I'm at the position 0, 0 here, around that, so you can easily remember where to teleport if you don't have this nice little link up here. Now the redstone, let's separate it into pieces. Down here we have the GPS part, the part that actually detects my position. And also the part that prints out these nice little numbers in my chat. Then on this level we have the setup that teleports me back to position. And then up here we have the central hub, where we can select with the buttons where I want to go, as well as the memory behind, which is just a bunch of chests. Let's start with the position detection, because that's probably the most interesting here. Imagine this to be the Minecraft world. 60 million by 60 million blocks. And we may have a few loaded chunks in the center here, a lot of unloaded chunks around, and of course we have the big area around the world. Now there are 2 things you need to know. Number 1, I can summon an entity inside the loaded chunks and then teleport it anywhere inside the loaded area. And still track it using entity selectors and teleport it even further, even into the area outside of the world. And even though it's not in the world anymore, I can still track it and teleport it even back into the world if I want to. Secondly, there's a group of commands that only work inside the world boundaries. If you try to execute them at the position outside of the world, they won't work. So if I would now have an entity like a pig and place it at the position of the player, I can continuously teleport it block by block further and further in one direction, until at one point I can't execute a certain command anymore. At that point I know the entity has left the world, and by counting how many blocks I had to teleport it, I know how far the player was away from the world border. And if I do that in 2 directions, I know the X and Z coordinates for that player. Of course, teleporting the entity block by block until it reaches the world's end may take a while, so there's a little trick you can use. Some of you may know the term binary search. That's what I use here. So I will start by placing the entity at the position of the player. And then I will do the following. If the entity is inside the world, I will teleport it further outwards. If it's outside of the world, I will teleport it further inside. And each step I take, I will teleport it less and less blocks. In my first attempt I will teleport it by 2 to the power of 25 blocks. That should be somewhere outside of the world even, if I start at the center of the world. And I will notice I'm outside of the world, so I need to teleport it back. But this time only by 2 to the power of 24, so half the way. Now I'm inside the world again, I will teleport it forward, this time by 2 to the power of 23. So a little bit further, maybe even shortly before the border. I'm still inside the world, so I will still teleport it forward, this time by 2 to the power of 22, if I count correctly. Maybe now I'm inside the area around the world, so I'd have to teleport it again by 2 to the power of 21, and so on. The end result will be that after about 26 steps in my case, I will close in exactly at the border of the world. And by tracking whenever I had to move forward and when I have to move backwards, I have a binary representation of the distance from the player to the world's border. And that's what I do in these two setups. These two constructs, left and right, consist each out of 26 smaller cells, and each cell consists out of 5 command blocks, most of them at least. And of those 5 command blocks, 2 combine the actual magic that happens. The upper one here is using the execute command to track whether or not an entity is inside the world. Execute is one of those commands that only work if the position where we use it on is inside the 60 by 60 million area. So this teleport here will only happen if the pick that we're searching for here, named scanline X, is inside the world. If the pick is outside the world, the execute will fail and it won't get teleported. No matter if it's inside or outside the world, we will definitely teleport the pick 1000 blocks backwards in this case. That means in total, if you add the two teleportations together, we teleport the pick 1000 blocks forward if it's inside the world, 2000 blocks forward here and 1000 back here. If it's not inside the world, we will only teleport it 1000 blocks back. And this happens in each of those cells for different values. Here it was 2000 and 1000, and here it's 2 and 1. Up here it's a larger number, 2 million, about that, 1 million maybe, yeah, seems right. And yeah, that's the principle for the teleportation, to find the border, and using the comparators at the upper command blocks with the execute command here, we can track the progress. We can track whether or not a pick had to be teleported at position backwards or forward. So, and here we have first a command block using block data to reset the output of the execute command blocks, so that each comparator here will only give a pulse. And then we have 2 command blocks which actually store the values. This one here is responsible for storing the coordinates, the amount of distance between the player and the border inside the scoreboard value. And this one here is responsible for storing the information in form of a named item in a chest in here. The scoreboard value is currently only used to give us a nice little text message, which I don't have to show you right now. But you can also use it for other things. I mean, it's a scoreboard value. You can imagine ways to use that coordinate value somewhere, I guess. So what do I do with the items that I store in here? Well, those items, as you have noticed, have the powers of 2 as names. And each item represents 1 bit of the actual distance I have to travel. And that's getting used by this setup above here. This setup here teleports the player to a specific position again. 2 designs just mirrored again, one for the Z and one for the X axis. And even though there are a lot of command blocks, they all do practically the same. On the insides we have a lot of test for block command blocks. They just check if there's an item in the chest below called, for example, 2 or 8 in here, or 8192. Now, if there's an item in the chest that's called that way, it will activate the comparators and therefore deactivate the torches on the outsides. That means that when I deactivate and activate the redstone lines on those command blocks here, only the command blocks next to unlit torches will actually activate and do something. And what they do is just teleport the players that are selected for jumping around the world by a specific amount of blocks. And you will notice again powers of 2 in here. That's all just powers of 2 in the binary format again. Actually pretty simple, just needs a lot of command blocks. And now to the last parts, where do the chests get stored and how does the storage work? Let's start with the easy part, the reading of the coordinates if I want to teleport to a pre-programmed destination. So if I press a button on the inside, it will first activate the command block below. And those command blocks will just clone the 2 chests in each row, respectively, onto these positions here. And it will also trigger this redstone line, which will activate the teleportation setup in here. And this teleportation setup actually reads the information from those 2 chests alone. So you will teleport the chests with the correct informations, with the correct programmed destination down there, and it will activate the jump setup here, the teleport setup, which will read from there. The complicated part is actually just the writing, if I want to program a new destination in. And for that I use, let me show you, wait, that is, yeah, a pig, which will start in the end here, and then block by block gets teleported forward over time. And on each block it tests whether or not there's a stone button attached to that wall above it. If there is, it will just move along. But if there's not a stone button, like just air or something else is placed there, then the pig will stop, and the destination that we have found out with the GPS setup down here and stored in those chests will be cloned up into the chest where the pig currently is. And also the pig will create a stone button at the correct position. And you will get a sign so you can write down the destination description. And this makes the system also pretty easy to expand. You also only have to make this line here a bit longer, make sure the redstone goes all the way back there, and of course you have to make the pig spawn further away here. But overall it's not too complicated. Once you understand the principles, you don't have to actually understand what each command block does to understand what happens here. And now let's have a closer look at that stuff above here and maybe the trigger for the system. Let's not talk about this part too much. What's really important is only that we have a fast clock here that activates every game tick and triggers these 2 command blocks here, which will make sure that we constantly look up the player's statistics for games quit, and using that we can display a nice little message with Telraw every time you join this map. And with this you have the option to, for example, teleport to the hub here, and you can get some spawn eggs for renamed silverfish, and there are a few command blocks up here which react to those silverfish, and there's also some lag currently, and a fast lock down here which will react to this special renamed silverfish called WPM, which actually triggers the whole system. You can look at that stuff yourself, it's really not that interesting, but yeah, that's the main part by now. I think I have said everything I need to say. 2 setups to track the player's position, 2 setups to place a player at a certain position, and a setup to control the whole thing. Warp points in vanilla Minecraft, working setup. I hope you like it, have fun with it. Tell me if it doesn't work, tell me if it does work. Tell me if you can use some parts of this on your own. I think something like a GPS in Minecraft might be cool for some other stuff as well. And yeah, thanks for watching, and see you next time.